So, Israel attacked Iran in a preemptive strike. Let's talk about that. I'll give you guys my take on it. And because I'm definitely not anywhere near an expert, I would say I'm an expert on geopolitics in Asia, but it's complex over in the Middle East, and it's even more complex in Europe. But I'll give you guys my take on it in a simple way so that you can understand what's going on from the big picture of what's really going on. So, diplomatically, the United States, Israel, and the West in general has lost all credibility diplomatically. Donald Trump came out and said that he wanted peace. His administration, because the reason why I start with Donald Trump is because the United States is who's driving this. This is the American empire, and Australia, which you guys out there are a part of. Australia is a part of the American empire. We are owned by the United States, and we have to do what we're told. We have to give what we have. We have to do what they tell us to do. So Israel attacked Iran. They first used drones. Now, the drone attack to take out the leadership in Iran, they used drones that came in on trucks that infiltrated deep within Iran. There's some reports that part of the Iranian leadership were bought out by Mossad. So actual Iranians sold out their own country. You just can't make this stuff up. Not that I don't know of this happening to Russia. The Russians are very... And it kind of reflects poorly on the entire society in Iran for this to happen. But aside from that, trucks were sneaked in by Mossad. Now, this is seen as something that has been proven, and then those drones, they had these magnificent drones. Like, I know I don't want to praise what happened, but they had these magnificent technology where these drones, let's just say you have a double brick house, which is really important in Australia. You need a double brick house. That's the difference between making it and having just a one brick, or you just have a corrugated iron house. If you're a real Aussie, you would understand. There's not many real Aussies left. The double brick, they had these drones that would hit the outer brick, and they would leave a hole that wasn't even half a meter, 200 millimeter wide. Small little holes. And then the second drone, whatever it is, I don't know what it is. I don't think they've released it. This is some sort of secret technology. The second one would hit the exact point and then get through the second layer of the bricks and launch the projectile within the building to blow up the person that they're aiming to assassinate. And that's how they took out the leadership. Insane. Now, I haven't seen this online yet. This is probably the first time you've heard it. That's exactly the same strategy that was used in Russia. Now, I'm not revealing any big secret here, but it's just simple pattern recognition. That's exactly what happened in Russia. And don't think that the Russians didn't notice. Don't think that the Iranians aren't sharing that information with Russia. Don't think that the Russians aren't fully aware that Mossad was behind that, and therefore Mossad's got a target on their head. I know Mossad's powerful, I know they're big and scary, but the Russians are far more scary. And that's been shown over the last 3 years. Don't mess with the Russians. So that drone attack was, put together by Mossad. They were very proud of that. They were proud of flipping Iranians and having double agents within. Also, then straight after that, they had, my understanding is 200 fighter jets enter Iranian airspace, unannounced. It was a sneak attack, and they hit 100 targets, nuclear sites, missile defense. You know those missile defense trucks that sit there and they got all these missiles on top? They targeted a whole bunch of those. It was a devastating blow. It was a brutal blow on the Iranians, and it seemingly came out of nowhere. The thing is, just before it happened, the news reported on all of the American embassies and all of the Iranian embassies evacuating. So there was a heads up. There was a massive heads up. It's amazing the amount of information that we can gather these days. You wouldn't have been able to get this any other time in history. We're living through, even though it's a brutal thing that happened and what we're seeing around the world is absolutely disgusting, don't get me wrong, we're living through a time where the amount of information, the amount of understanding on what's going on, we've never had this much information in all of history. And that changes warfare, because now a lot of these strategies that have been used, they can only be used once. And so therefore, the most innovative nation or empire is going to win this battle. Now, is the West the most creative? Well, they're not utilizing people like myself. I don't want to be arrogant, but I'm quite innovative. I should be in there somewhere, and I would just do it. Even though it's not a very proper thing to say, I'll do it for fun. The lead up to it, the American empire, was headed by Donald Trump and funded, he was bought out by the Israelis, and that's how he got into power. It's the cheapest way to own a superpower. It's amazing how easily you can buy out a superpower. A couple $100 million, boom, you have access to trillions of dollars. That's a bargain. Donald Trump came out and he had a fake beef with Netanyahu, the leader of Israel, and said that he's not going to, he's against he hinted that the genocide's bad. It's bad what's going on in Ukraine. He wants to end all of the wars. He led the Iranian leadership into thinking that nothing was going to happen, and then overnight there were evacuations all across Israel, embassies. The United States was evacuating Americans out of all areas that could have been struck in a retaliation strike by Iran. And the lead up to it, we discovered, at least a month or two prior, the United States sent those missiles through. So it wasn't just 200 fighter jets that entered Iranian airspace. There were a whole bunch of warheads and I think all sorts of complicated missiles. Don't expect me to tell you exactly what they were and how they got there. I can give you their names. I had a look at them, but that doesn't really help us here. The United States gave them the missiles that they needed to strike Iran. The F-35s, that technology was given to Iran from the United States. It's not a full it's not the most advanced F-35. Iran claims to have taken down one of these F-35s, which is it's really sad. It's actually really sad that they're claiming this because they got hit so hard and so many. This country's been working on defending themselves for such a long time, and overnight, a large proportion of that country was destroyed. Iran claimed to have taken down an F-35. Now, the thing is, it's not the biggest. Firstly, you take out one when 200 aircraft enters your airspace. It's not exactly an achievement, is it? But that's what makes this so sad. Also, they've spent so much time working on, developing, having domestic scientists, to try to build their own domestic sort of arsenal to defend themselves. And it was crushed overnight. My understanding, I'm getting conflicting information. Some people say that it was devastating. There are some people that are saying that Iran has an unbelievable arsenal underground. They have an unbelievable stockpile of missiles underground that could be launched into Israel, and those missiles that we've seen so far, the majority have been their old, useless arsenal of old, slow missiles that they're just lobbing into Israel to try to wear down and take note of the weak spots in this, what do they call it, the Iron Dome defense system. And they're lobbing cheap, dumb, old technology that they don't really want anymore, and they're targeting different areas and mapping out all of Israel to try and figure out where's the best spot to hit with the good stuff. And in between, they're sending some of those hypersonic missiles, which I remember a decade ago hearing about these hypersonic missiles and just thinking, no way that's true. It's true, and I've seen some of the videos of these things. They strike hard and they're fast. Now, a lot of the videos that we're seeing, let's go back. Let's step back. So the F-35 that they claim to have taken down, we haven't seen any evidence of that yet. And the F-35 that Israel has isn't the complete F-35 that the United States has. So it's even more sad. It's actually quite sad. It's pitiful in a way. They work so hard, and imagine being brought up into that society, and then your whole country's getting wrecked. And you had faith in the leadership, and I can't help but look at the social media of Iran and the diplomacy that these guys are putting forward, the propaganda that they're putting out there. Keep in mind, a lot of these countries, they this is just propaganda. It's smoke and mirrors. People talk about that. It's the fog of war, right? But Iran objectively is the victim here. Yet you look at the propaganda that the leadership's putting out. What are you doing? What are you saying? You're the victim, and they're literally saying, oh, with God's glory, we're going to kill Israel and America and this and that. I'm looking at that thinking, your country just got wrecked and you're out there tweeting this retarded shit. When really, the lead up to this, you don't think even, you guys heard of Max Blumenthal? He's anti-Israel. He's quite famous. He was in Iran recently. He was in Iran literally 3 weeks ago. Why didn't any of the leadership in Iran know the importance of social media? Why wasn't any of the leadership uh, on Joe Rogan, or you know, I'm sure a lot of them would have been given a voice, because as soon as the strike hit, Netanyahu came out and he put out a speech in English, not for the Israelis. It was propaganda designed to target Americans. And the Iranians aren't even in the game. They have no idea how to play this propaganda game. And it's just sad to see how far behind they are. Like, I'm just thinking, what have they been doing all this time? Don't they understand how this works? So, because if you're the leader of a country that has millions of people, that's their lives you're dealing with. And if you're tweeting stupid shit saying death to America and all this other bullshit, you're putting a target on your people's heads, especially when the United States and Israel, because Israel wouldn't survive without United States funding it, is a ruthless, ruthless, ruthless power. Keep in mind, Hitler admired the United States for how ruthless it was, okay? Just for context here. Don't mess with the United States. It's a ruthless, vicious power. And the Iranians, it's almost like they were unaware of the game. So the lead up to it, Donald Trump pretends that he didn't know about it, even though he gave he's the one that signed off on all of these missiles to be sent to Israel in the lead up to it. And so he did know, and he tweeted out or truthed out that how proud he was that he bamboozled everybody. Which means that any sort of talks between Ukraine and Russia, Turkey, none of these countries are going to take them seriously anymore. And so the United States, if they tell you one thing, you can never trust them. And a big part of the diplomacy in international relations is, what we do is we agree on something small, and then you agree on something small, and then we verify that you actually did it, right? You took a step in the right way. We get our inspectors in, you get your inspectors in, we verify, we handshake, and over a long period of time, we start to build up some form of trust that you will do what you say you will do, but that trust takes a long time to build up. And the United States, with Donald Trump and yet Netanyahu, have just, I think it's a fatal error, because now the United States administration will never be trusted. I don't know how many years it will take to build that trust up again. And if you know the United States history, 100 years ago, when the United States said it would do something, generally most countries would trust it. Generally, the United States of ruthless power would generally be one of the most honest and forthright. And if you study international relations between countries, they're usually more truthful between each other. Putin and Donald Trump and Zelensky, and the new lunatic in Germany, Merckx, the BlackRock leader that is going to destroy Germany again. Whatever puppet's in charge in Britain at the moment. I'm ashamed to have British background. They would generally tell you the truth at the negotiation table. And the reason for that is because you can verify a lot of these things, while simultaneously the leaders of a country would turn around and lie to the domestic population. A leader is more likely to lie to the domestic population than a foreign adversary. And there's papers written on this. This is science. It's a proven fact that this is how this works. There's many papers written on this. In fact, one of the best, John Mearsheimer, actually wrote a paper on this particular topic. But there's been many written on this. And this is why most people are always trying to figure out what their government is doing, because the government's always lying to you. But if you're in those talks, generally most of what is said is the truth, because you can't hide it. And once they find out that you're lying, then they're going to lie to you. Then they're going to play the same game with you. There's a saying, and I don't know who put this saying together, but Russians play chess and the United States plays poker. The United States lies and cheats and steals and tries to bluff, and the Russians just play their moves. You see their moves. It's open, and they defeat you honestly, and you can see it happening. And that's kind of what's happening right now, because when the peace talks came in and they started in Ukraine, and trust me, if you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out where I'm going with this, it's all very much connected. You know, a lot of the rhetoric was that Russia didn't want to have peace talks. Yet Mossad, with those trucks and the attack, and some parts of it was attacks on, trains and bridges, which some people would call a terrorist attack. Russia has now officially declared Ukraine as a terrorist country now. And you don't negotiate with terrorists. So, this is how things are degrading fast. So you can see how they bamboozled, and they were very proud of it, the American empire, bamboozling the Iranians. But now no one's going to take them seriously. We also can, we can assume that Mossad and the Israelis were behind the attack on Russia as well. Look, if I can put that together, the Russians would have put it together a long time ago. The reason why this is important is you can now trust that there's going to be a lot of support for Iran. And what we're doing now, everybody, is waiting to see if Iran can survive, basically. You see, what's happening now is it's the same thing, it's the same issue that started in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine straight after COVID. That's what ended COVID, remember? COVID, that was a geopolitical weapon, and I'm deep into this video so I can actually say this and get away with it. COVID was a geopolitical weapon put together by, I believe, the Israelis, Fauci, Henry Kissinger, the lab leak theory is a theory now. It's not a hypothesis, it's a theory. I think that's the general consensus. And it was designed to try to slow down China, because China's an exporting nation. And if you know your history, when there was an Asian flu, when Dwight Eisenhower was in charge, Dwight Eisenhower told the American people, it's just a flu. Get to work, you pussies. Put on a mask if you're scared. Sure, we got some vaccines, we'll jab you, we'll give you some masks, get to work. And that was because the United States was an exporting nation at that point. The Asian flu was far more deadly than COVID ever was, by the way, because the Asian flu killed children. COVID killed old people. So just so you're aware of that. And it was designed to kill old people. They were hoping to kill off some of our older people and the boomers within the West, while simultaneously shutting down exports out of China to try and crush their economy, and a multifaceted attack. Reduce the amount of US dollars flowing into China so they couldn't build the Belt and Road Initiative, and then use that to cut off all of the countries that are signed up to BRICS, while simultaneously blaming China for something that they did. Genius. And still today, years later, no one's put that together. I feel like I'm the only person on the internet that's put that together. But anyway, and I'm happy to debate anybody about that. I'm happy. It'll probably be a very long debate. Yeah. And then Russia, what they did was they struck the United States just when they struck Ukraine just when the United States was going into quantitative tightening to negatively affect their economy. It is the most epic counterpunch in history. There will be books written about this in the future. They haven't been written yet. No one's put all these pieces together yet. But it was the sweet spot to attack. And then what Russia did was they pulled back because they just wanted a release valve so that they could have all of the weaponry from the West directed into this one sweet spot so that Russia could destroy it. And that's what they've been doing. If you're an Australian, you probably aren't aware that almost all of our tanks, all of our military hardware, infantry, weapons, everything, helmets, you name it, machine guns, whatever, everything has been, the amount of Abrams tanks that the Russians have destroyed in Ukraine that have miraculously just vanished from Australian shores and appeared in Ukraine is unbelievable. I've lost count of them. Hundreds? Australia has nothing left. So what else has been emptied? In the United States, Britain, look at what they've done. They're now building factories in France, Germany, and England because they've run out of stock. Australia's run out of stock. And so if you try to think about what that means, it means that right now, the West, because of Russia's move, hitting right at the sweet spot when they're going into quantitative tightening and emptying our military stocks out and destroying it in Ukraine, deliberately making sure that they stay within Ukraine and they don't suck NATO in. This is why Mossad and Iran, Israel, not Iran, they stepped in there to try to do this sneak attack deep into Russia, to try to suck them into something bigger, to try to get them out of their sweet spot. Because what we're doing is we're fighting them within their range, which means the Ukrainians are getting destroyed, and all of our stock has been destroyed as well. So large parts of the West right now have nothing left and are technically undefended right now. Australia right now has less military equipment than any other country in Asia. We are now the weakest country in Asia. Sure, we got some navy, but if they land anything on our shores, They land 1,000 troops on the top end of Australia somehow on little boats. If Indonesia enters the war, and Indonesia has condemned the genocide and the preemptive attacks on Iran. And they've had a lot of meetings with China recently, which I've been explaining for a very long time. So you guys that have been following me for a while, you're fully aware that Indonesia will side with China if anything goes south. And Australia will get crushed. They might not have advanced technology, but you have 3 average boats take out 1 advanced boat. It's highly likely that they will swarm us and win and defang Australia, and we'll be defenseless real fast. So back to what's going on in Israel, because this is all connected. Because you cannot talk about Ukraine without talking about Iran. You cannot talk about the diplomacy in Turkey without talking about what Donald Trump did trying to bamboozle the Iranians. You cannot talk about the preemptive strike on Ukraine without talking about the preemptive strike on Iran. You cannot talk about the quote-unquote terrorist attack that happened, what the Russians say is a terrorist attack. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a terrorist attack because Russia attacked Ukraine first. This is now open warfare, and all of those targets are now on the table. So it's basically the same as when, hummus, the dip, attacked Israel on October 7th. Even I know the date because it's been repeated so many times by all their propagandists in the West. That's not a terrorist attack when the Palestinians are under attack. And they're far weaker than the Israelis. It's the same way the Russians can't claim that that is a terrorist attack when the Ukrainians are far weaker, even though they're backed by so many powers like the United States. And they've got all Australian military hardware there. I can't believe it. So, with all that said, what are we going to look for moving forward? Now, one more thing. They took out Syria overnight, not last night. It wasn't too long ago. They moved in and took out Syria. They took out Syria within a matter of hours. And they installed a new leader inside Syria. And that Syria, my understanding, was previously an Al-Qaeda member that apparently hated America, while simultaneously being a double agent for the CIA. You can see how convoluted and complicated this is. And this is why when you look at geopolitics, you've got to step back and go, okay, well, what is this person, whatever this entity or whatever this thing is, what are they trying to achieve and who's... And then just go, okay, well, if they're trying to achieve that, they must be on this side. And so you can really, a lot of people did say that Al-Qaeda was funded by the CIA and Israel, and then we get into 9/11, and then we get into a whole bunch of stuff, which I'm not going to get into today. But from Syria, they were able to launch a lot of those missiles that the United States sent to Israel because it's closer. And if you look at it where it is on the map, it made it easier for them to launch on Iran. Now, Iran for a very long time has been seen as this big bogeyman that, Israel would not want to mess with. Now, I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? Is Iran going to survive? And that's what we're doing right now. We are effectively waiting. It might take a month. Some people say that Iran will be crushed within 3 months. We don't know. Nobody knows. there are people on the inside that probably have a fair understanding on how large the arsenal hidden underground that Iran has is and how long it will last. And for the rest of us, that's just the fog of war. We don't know. And so what we're going to do is we're going to wait around, we're going to watch closely. We're going to, every time the media tells us something happens, we're going to go to Twitter. Okay? We're going to go to Twitter and Telegram and a whole bunch of other resources out there that I'm sure you guys know about. And if you have the time, you can go check it out. If not, you can just wait for my geopolitical updates here and I'll give you my take. It's not going to be daily updates. It's going to be big overview, important stuff like what we're talking about today. Just a real simplistic view of what's happening. And so what we're doing right now is we're watching and we're waiting. And for some people out there, we're buying gold because gold's pumping while the stock market's going sideways at the moment. So hopefully your retirement's not getting crushed right now, because every time there's a missile launched into Iran or Israel, the stock market dumps again. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be watching Iran to see if they survive this. Why does that matter? Because China has already come out and condemned this. Russia's got its hands tied, I would assume. Maybe the North Koreans still have men that they can send in. Maybe you'll see Laos, Cambodians on the front line in Iran. It's possible. It's highly likely. The weather is very similar in Cambodia than it is in Iran. So they would be able to fit in quite easily. It's just whether they can communicate over there or not. And they'll get the military experience that they need for what I think China's going to try to do with Thailand moving forward. They need to put a bit of pressure on Thailand and squeeze through Thailand, and they need to have supply lines that can go straight through Laos, Cambodia, through the sea, build a land bridge through Thailand. I think they might take part of Thailand at the bottom there. Thailand doesn't have the demographics to really do anything about it at the moment. They could be in talks with Malaysia as well. This is all connected. China has come out and condemned Israel for the attacks, of course, because they're on the opposing side. And my understanding is supplies from China are on their way now. China is sending, I don't know what they're sending. Who knows? They're sending something, and we're about to find out what China's factories can do. Because a lot of the arsenal, a lot of the artillery, a lot of the weapons, basic manufacturing that is going into Russia right now is coming from China. It'll be so interesting to see what they send to Iran. And, the Israelis, they're arch enemies with China, and they've spent a lot of the last 10 or more years trying to ferment hatred against China, and they've been very successful at doing that. And the reason is because Henry Kissinger, who was an Israeli agent, he saw an opportunity to bring China into the WTO, the World Trade Organization, when China was weak and China was poor, and build factories within China to manufacture, take advantage of their cheap labor and low skilled labor and manufacture goods to send back to the United States. Israelis controlled a large proportion of those factories, and Israelis gave the technology to these Chinese factories. And they took a cut of that money. That cash went into the hands of Israelis, and then they used that cash to then go back to the United States to buy politicians. And that happened in the 90s. So if you have a look at the 90s up until now, and you're wondering, how does Israel have so much power? It's because a lot of the wealth was made through those factories and the tech transfer, and people say illegal tech transfer into China from the United States, but they rarely catch any Chinese doing it. It's because they were Israelis that had the technology already that were doing it to get the cash to go back and buy American politicians. That's another doozy. That's another one that no one else talks about. You don't spend a decade. This channel's been running a decade. You don't spend a decade here talking about these things and speaking to, like I've been doing this a decade. You don't think people have called me or wanted to meet up and give me their take on things, and 99% of them are whack jobs. 0.5% are really cool people that are like, want to hang out, and 0.00001% of them are legit people that are actually they have legit information. So I take all calls. If any of you guys want to reach out to me and give me some inside information, I'd love to hear it, because I'm just fascinated with how the world works and what is really going on. I don't want to sit back and think, why is this happening? How is this happening? I want to know. I genuinely want to know what is going on out there. So that's my take on it. Final thing that I'd like to add is Odessa. Odessa. I mentioned this in 2022, if you guys can remember. If any of you guys that are still following me today can remember 2022, Odessa is very important. My understanding is that Russia is just bombing it at the moment. I think it was a French ship that they bombed recently that was carrying a lot of stock, to rearm the Ukrainians. It was bombed. Apparently quite a few ships have been bombed, and parts of that, parts of Odessa have been attacked. Now, the thing here is, we've been waiting 3 years. It's almost like waiting for, do you remember Maverick, the movie was with Tom Cruise? It was delayed for like 2 years. I remember waiting for years for this damn movie to come out. That's Odessa. And it was worth it, by the way. It was a good movie. Odessa is going to be the first time we're going to have troops trying to land under the new drones and under the new technology that we have today. And so many people want to see how and if Russia can do that. Not only in the West to see how effective this new modern technology is, we also want to see how China also wants to see how they would be able to do it if they were to, in the not too distant future, with Taiwan. Now, keep in mind, I'm on the other side of this, argument here. Whenever I hear that you know, we're going to invade Taiwan, I just roll my eyes because it's got to be the safest country in the world right now. The probability of China invading Taiwan, it would have to be a massive brain fart moment for China to want to do something so stupid, especially right now. It would be crazy to do that. And geopolitics is a science. This isn't just some whack job on the internet giving you conspiracy theories. Uh, China's a land power. And sure, Taiwan is close by, and they want to break out the first line of defense, they call it. The line of defense. You got Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Guam. Well, Guam's part of the second line of defense, but you get what I mean. There's two lines that are designed to basically blockade China if anything kicks off. So for China to get involved in that would be absolutely ridiculous. What they need to do is make sure that they have a backup plan in case the United States, with the help of South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, try to blockade them on that side so that they can still export through Laos, Cambodia, cross that little sea over there that they would have total control over, subdue Thailand, build a land bridge with the permission of the Malaysians, build up Singapore 2.0, maybe even dig a canal. There was talks, and it was funded by China. It was funded to build a Thai canal, and then they changed the plans and they decided to build a land bridge with trains, so you could go from one side to the other. It's south, right at the southern tip of Thailand, if you have a look at the map. So China can get their trade through Cambodia. As you guys are aware, I spent quite a lot of time in Cambodia, one of the only people that was reporting on the geopolitical situation in Cambodia. And I do believe a large part of my analysis, I don't think it's too arrogant, there's no one else reporting on this, that was a reason why 49% tariffs, the largest tariffs, were put on Cambodia, because they were trying to, hey, look, we're here, we want to trade, we're buying your stuff, like, we want to be your friends. Don't let China use you as a pawn. We might have to bomb you one day in the future. And by the way, we have talks this week. Not us. The United States has talks with Cambodia. Second round of trade talks. Now, this is all connected. And a lot of this trade that's happening here is all geopolitical. Now, we're waiting for Iran to see if they're going to survive. If they survive, and the reinforcements, no doubt they're panicking on calls to their allies, Russia, China. What can you send us? What got destroyed? How can we replenish what you lost? What's our capability? This is, these are the loans. It's funny how the United States thinks they're being smart by trying to take them out. But if Iran gets weakened and they have to pay back loans in oil over the next 100 years to China at a very good rate, that's not going to help the United States in 50 years' time, is it? It's only going to help China. And people have been talking about how Iran might shut off oil. if there's a shortage of oil because there's a war in the Middle East, that benefits Russia. Donald Trump was talking about drill, baby, drill, and having long discussions with OPEC to try and lower the, to make oil as cheap as possible so that they can hurt Russia's economy, because none of these, you know, none of these targeted sanctions, no matter how targeted they could get, they didn't hurt Russia. If anything, Russia's doing quite well at the moment. And it's not just me saying that. A lot of people that are in the United States agree with that now. The sanctions actually helped Russia in a way. And I'm not the only one that said that. I got that information from economists and experts in the United States. It's not my opinion, it's apparently fact. Russia's doing quite well under sanctions. Now, drill baby drill, lower the cost of oil, was designed to try to, okay, look, this is, people say that Russia's a petrol station with guns. Well, if you lower the cost of oil, then you hurt their economy, apparently. And that's not exactly true, by the way. They have a large manufacturing industry, and they're a superpower for a reason, because you can't cut them off from anything. That's the definition of a superpower, by the way. So a lot of people have been saying, look, we're going to cut Russia off. The whole point of being a superpower is that they have everything that they need, and you cannot hurt them. You cannot take them out. You cannot cut them off. China's now a superpower. So the idea that oil coming out of Iran is going to hurt China, I don't think so. This will be the final thought before we wrap this up. If the cost of oil increases, it only helps Russia. Now, if people think that that's going to hurt China, they've got it wrong. China's the richest country on earth. And then all Russia's going to do is give the same deal to China because they're on the same team. And if they don't have a surplus of fuel, who are they going to cut off? They're going to cut off India. Okay? And India's trying to back Thailand right now. And so if Russia cuts off Indian oil and India's trying to back Thailand, and China goes in there and, with a proxy, with, backing the Cambodians. And, I covered that this week as well. There was a skirmish on the border. The Cambodians have a whole bunch of Cambodian Khmer, religious temples that were built some 900 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And everyone agrees that that's what they are. They went to the international court in The Hague, the same court that declared that what Israel is doing is a genocide. And the Thais came out and they said that we agree. We can't disagree with that. They're your temples. Can we just have bilateral agreements without dealing with the international community? They admitted that they're in the wrong, and the Cambodians might have the ability to come and take a large proportion of Thailand with the backing of China. They have good demographics. The majority of the population in Cambodia is under 40. Their demographic pyramid is an actual pyramid. If you look at the demographic pyramid in Thailand, it just looks like a big ball. There's no kids coming through. It's an aging population. Any sort of pressure from Cambodia, Thailand would actually collapse. So India would have to send a lot of people in, and that would have to spend a lot of oil to do so. It'd be a diplomatic nightmare for India as well. And then Russia goes, oh, sorry, look, we're running out of oil because of the whole Iranian thing. And you can kind of see how the whole world is kind of connected. And This is what I spent the last decade thinking about and looking at, and I just can't see any way that the American empire survives any of these regions. The American empire, I don't think, with the increase in military spending in the West, Britain and Germany. The German leader is basically Israeli, by the way. That's my take on it. Look, you guys can disagree in the comments all you want. Merckx is an Israeli, in my opinion. That's the American empire. Germany is the American empire. The only independent country in the West, my opinion, is France. And France is flooded with immigrants from that area of the world that is very dysfunctional. And I'm not talking about the Middle East. So I don't think France, even though this is their chance, this is their time to shine, is going to be able to do anything. I see Russia dominating, and I also see Russia playing this in a very professional, level-headed way. I don't see war crimes coming out of Russia. So, sure, people are going to claim that, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. All the war crimes, all of the dodgy deals, all of the sneak attacks, all of the lies, all of the cheating, all of the vans stealing people off the street to send them to the front lines. It's all coming from the West. All the terrorist attacks, all the genocides, all the major diplomacy errors that make us all look like fools and liars and cheats and deceptive scumbags. They're making us look really bad out there. I'm not seeing any of that from the Russians. I'm not a Russian. I'm not a Russian agent. I'm not funded by Russia. This is just my objective analysis on the situation. While the West is becoming more authoritarian, I'm sure you guys have heard of Palantir recently. We don't need to know about Palantir because we know. We don't need to know about Palantir because we already know that we're being monitored. I was investigated years ago because I made some predictions on the stock market. Ever since then, they've been following me around for the last decade, these scumbags. They've been following me around, they've been tapping my phone, they've been harassing me, they've been speaking to people that I know, they've been sending things to them, harassing me, just for doing this, objective analysis on the geopolitical situation. And in reality, isn't that what you want as an Australian? You want objective analysis of what's going on? You want bullshit. Well, that's what's happening in the West. We've got this authoritarianism, this 1984, these lockdowns with these vaccines, and they're pushing all of this stuff on us. They're taking away our freedom of speech. They're really harassing us out there. And I thought that was what China was supposed to be doing. But it seems like we're more authoritarian than China. And as you guys are aware, I was the first person to call out China because I'd play out a lot of these things and do a lot of this, this research, and it all comes back to China. What's going on in Israel, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Europe right now, what's going on with India. It all goes back to China dominating Asia in the end. All of these things are connected to China, whether you want to admit it or not. And this is why I step back and I look at it from a big macro point of view, because it's all connected to China. China's this big, massive, behemoth octopus that has its fingers in everything and is controlling everything and has the wealth to do that for a very long time. They have the manufacturing base, they have everything they need to control everything. And the United States is weakening day by day. So, look, we're coming up to an hour. It's been a good talk. think I covered a few things. I don't know what I'm going to title this video, but I want to end this video right on 1 hour. Give me a thumbs up.